Hello and welcome to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Herod, and today we are going to really dig deep into that concept of version 2.0 that you always hear me talking about. And today I'm excited to have a guest with me who knows this world inside and out. I'm here with Shelby Nicholl. And Shelby is the founder of Muriel Consulting. She helps advisors figure out their career moves, whether they're moving between firms or breaking away to form their own RIAs. And she leads a digital community for women called Muriel Network. And she's the host of the Kick It Open podcast, which you may have heard our conversation a few months prior to this one. So we've had a conversation there. It was really fun to be a guest on your podcast, Shelby, and I'm really happy that you could come join me on mine.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yes, I've so enjoyed our prior conversation. Looking forward to talking and sharing some insights with your listeners too. Thank you.
Great. Now, I understand you just got back from a vacation. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. We took the kids for spring break this year and went to Istanbul, Turkey, and Marrakesh, Morocco.
Oh, my.
So we did 9 days across the two countries, and my kids love to travel. And I think my youngest had packed his bag like 5 weeks before, so he loves to travel, and we had a great trip.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have not been to those places yet and look forward to getting over to that part of the world. So that's exciting. Well, it's important to fold everything into our busy lives, right? And figure out how do we integrate work and life and how do we make it all happen. And I'm happy to hear you prioritize that to have a family experience and adventure.
Yeah, that is definitely, in the scheme of life and how you spend your money, we all make our choices and travel is our choice. That is a huge, huge thing for us. And we really want our kids. I have this goal of having the kids all touch all of the continents by the time that they're 18. So that's kind of driving where we go also.
Wow. I like that framework. We had a similar one for my daughter because my son's a little older. My daughter, we wanted her to have 10 countries by age 10. And it was just we were on a roll and we realized that she could do 10 countries by age. So then she got into it too. And, we were like, okay, we might need to zip up to Canada,
Yes.
But we had been living in Australia. And so we, did a trip over to New Zealand. And so we were able to get the 10th, which was really kind of fun and really somewhat arbitrary, but we kind of all got behind it and everyone were like, now which other country should we go to?
Yes, the kids start dreaming about where they want to go next when you do this. And 2 years ago, we did 5 countries in 9 days in Europe with them for spring break. And that just has set us all off on this path of travel and desire for travel. So the kids are asking for Japan next. I'm asking for Australia or New Zealand.
I'll give you a full
itinerary.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, okay, we'll come back to this because we started with the end, which is what fulfills you. So we'll come back around and talk more about that. But it sounds like travel is a big part of your experience and family. So that's exciting. And speaking of fulfillment and finding fulfillment, I know you're having many conversations all the time with advisors of just what do they want? What works for them? Where are they going? So give us a little context on the work that you do, and then we'll kind of dig into, some of the various things you're noticing in the industry right now.
Yeah, so appreciate that. And so just a little bit about me is I had a 25-year corporate career. I really have grown up in this industry. I started my career at AG Edwards back in the day when it was still AG. Spent almost a decade at Edward Jones more recently here, and then also was a senior vice president at LPL. So I really came up the broker-dealer side and a lot of that captive kind of wirehouse piece, and then into the very big behemoth of Edward Jones, and then over to independent. And when I exited LPL, I really wasn't sure what my next step would be. I knew I wanted to consult and work with advisors. I wanted to help accelerate women inside of the industry as well. But I had at that time advisors from Edward Jones, from my network, calling and saying, hey, knew you, trust you. I'm going to move my practice. Where do you think I should go? And so that has really launched me into this recruiting consulting space. And what I've realized is that it's such an opportunity for people to do the 2.0, as you call it. It's really the time where you can reimagine and re-envision what you want your practice and your life to be. And so we dive into, what's working for you today? What do you hope for the future? What do you want to build? What do you want to pass on? What does that legacy look like? And then with all of that in there, we can match you to firms. And then we stay involved also throughout the whole transition, making sure you have everything that you need in order to have a successful launch.
Oh, that's great. So who would you say is kind of the common or the common profile of women? I know you help many people, but that you have a passion around helping women in the industry. But what's kind of a common profile of people that you're serving?
Yeah, it's interesting. It started out with a lot of Edward Jones teams, of course, because of my natural network or natural market, as advisors would say. And it's definitely morphing. I'm seeing a lot of still women certainly are very drawn to me, especially because of my podcast called Kick It Open, and it's kind of focused and often featuring women advisors and such there. But I would say I'm getting breakaways of all kinds, and sometimes they are breaking away from an RIA. Maybe they were part of a boutique RIA that was gobbled up by a big aggregator. And at that point, they don't feel like they have the same career trajectory as they thought they would have when they joined that boutique firm. And so you're seeing some breakaways. They're starting their own shop, if you will. I have breakaways also from some of the wirehouses. And then, of course, right now in the market, we're seeing a lot happening with Commonwealth having been the purchase by LPL having been recently announced of Commonwealth. We are seeing Commonwealth advisors looking around, lifting their heads up and saying, gosh, if I can't stay at Commonwealth where I loved life, where should I go? Is LPL the right home for me? And for many it will be, but is there a different home that might be better for me?
Right. And I think that Commonwealth LPL, so that's being the hot topic at the time of this conversation. It was surprising, right? To be like, oh, how about that? And I know I've worked with a number of Commonwealth advisors, and, I don't think anyone saw that coming, which is, it kind of sets you in a place to be like, oh, the opportunity now, as soon, as after you get over the initial, like, okay, the opportunity now is to really take that step back and evaluate, okay, what do I want moving forward? What's the opportunity? And whether or not you were ready to take an evaluation on that, it gives you that opportunity and can open the door, as you like to say, kick it open, like to something new. So how would you recommend, or how do you work with advisors in any of these situations you've talked about, whether it was more an intentional outreach to say, I want something different, I need to take a look at things, or the outcome of an event where you're finding that the path you're on is not the one you thought it was going to be? How do you help an advisor look at that situation and make progress?
Yeah. So, when advisors are working with me, we're going to start always with a conversation, usually about an hour long, around what do you want your practice to be? What is it today? And I love to talk about, when I'm matching advisors to firms, I think about three big buckets of three categories of if you will, of requirements. So I came out of corporate, and when you were building software, you would have written down the requirements of what the software wanted to do, right? So I really bring that kind of an approach into the matchmaking. So what are the requirements that we want to write down for this advisor's practice? And I think about those in three categories. The first is functional. Like, what is the tech that you need? How is your advisory business set up? Are there certain SMAs that you definitely want to have, or certain access to money managers? How much access to alternative investments do you want? Are you a fee for service? Also, do you do fee for planning? And so how do you charge for that? What kind of flexibility might we need there? How do you plan to market yourself? Because different firms have different maybe tightness and when it comes to compliance, and different levels of oversight there. And so we want to make sure that we land you at a place that meets your functional needs, both the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. We think about your tech stack. What are you used to using? Let's try to retain some of that. Let's talk about what might be better in the future and under this new opportunity. We also talk about financial. Is it most important to you to maintain the highest payout possible, or is it most important that you have the really amazing service from that platform that you're joining? When it comes to custodian choices, is it important that you have things like international clients, and so you want a custodian that can really serve those well? Those are some of the things that we're going to dive into. How do you feel about a PE-backed firm? Right? Do you want to avoid that, or is it okay? And then we talk about personality things. Do you have really strong spiritual beliefs, or do you have really strong political beliefs, and you want to land at a place that feels like home for you? What kind of ethos do you want out of the firm? Who do you want to learn from? Those are some of those personality components that they really make a good firm match and a good firm decision. Like, that's where the magic comes in.
Oh, those are great criteria. And I do, I had a flashback to in a whole nother life when we would outline like, okay, what are the requirements? And we'd look at, okay, we'd be building like database or merging databases, and how do we look at the requirements for that? So I appreciate the structure there. And I think too many people probably think in only like maybe the financials or the functions, and they forget that personality element. And so I think that's really important that you bring that in. And how is it that you look, and that, I mean, I understand that if you're looking to move to another firm, but at what point do you encourage and or see the path forward for someone as being, okay, you should probably start your own RIA?
Yeah, so I think about that, and one, just a kind of rule of thumb for me is, if I were an advisor and managing my own RIA, I would be worried about the compliance headaches and the paperwork headaches. So first of all, I probably wouldn't start my own RIA until I was over 100 million and I could go into an SEC registration. So that's one piece for sure.
That does make things a lot easier.
It just does. It just does. And there are plenty of great RIA platforms, as I call them, where you can tag into their ADV. And then once you hit that 100 million, you can peel off onto your own later. And so I think there's
what are some examples
paths
of those RIA platforms that you would steer people toward, or at least consider?
Yeah, I think there's several that can be in consideration, and one that I think Chuck Fala as well. Chuck Fala runs the Go RIA podcast. He has a firm called Sovereign Advisor Solutions. Sovereign is set up that way to where you can glide on to Sovereign and glide off later. Equita is one that is woman-owned and woman-led for a lot of female advisors. Again, you can go on to their ADV and then move off of it later. So I think there's a few different options out there. Uptick Partners is another one. Even some of the big ones that are out there, you can do this too. Right. So, and then there, of course, if you're a large firm, let's say you're 300 million and above or so, you can go on to like a Dynasty, and Dynasty can handle a lot of that back office for you and that behind the scenes work for you, but you can still be on your own ADV, but still have much of that covered. So those are going to be some of the things we think about for RIAs.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know some of those. I know the compliance alone can be one reason why people don't go that path. And, I've seen more and more solutions coming up too for advisors so that they don't have to handle that and they can outsource a lot of that. But I also see that once you hit the SEC clearance, it does open up more doors for you on that in terms of what you have to do. So when someone is thinking about starting their own RIA, do you have words of wisdom for them when they have reached that point where they're like, okay, now I'm at a point where I have enough assets under management. I know what I'm doing. How do you approach that?
Yeah. So if they're going to go from the broker dealer world, let's say they were, even a Commonwealth person or someone else, and they want to go start their own RIA, Again, we're going to talk a little bit about platforming because you can glide onto the platform, make your transition to RIA, and then glide off. If you really want to go to your own ADV right out of the gate, you really need to work with somebody, it doesn't have to be me, but somebody like me, somebody that can help you understand all the components that need to be put in place for a successful launch of that RIA, and someone who can sort of quarterback and maybe project manage that, right? So when I work with an advisor, even on a regular move, a captive BD to an independent BD, right, a regular-ish move, I have a 240-line spreadsheet that we make sure everything's covered.
Lord.
Right. Yeah. So there's
I could have used you back when I started my RA. I was like winging it, and I could have used someone with a project plan.
Yes, yes. So you need that project plan. It's just the right way to do it. You need somebody that has those connections, like you do, Kristen, and I do. We have these connections all across the industry for connecting people to the marketing resources and the compliance resource and the transition teams, et cetera, that can really help with that account paperwork. We've got all these components to stand up, and so we can quarterback that.
Right. I have a client I'm working with I've worked with them for over a year now, and they were an IAR on a corporate ADV, and then they spun off to do their own RIA. So that's been really fun to see them forge their full independence over the last year, and making their own decisions around what to market and what the language is and what that looks like. So that's been it's really fun to see when advisors get to a point where they know it's time to do their own thing. I have a soft spot for that, but I know there's plenty of options that along the spectrum of running a business or running your business within another platform that can work really well.
Well, and I have a soft spot for that too, in that I love for advisors to fully own their book of business. That is definitely near and dear to my heart, ideally, especially if you're an entrepreneurial advisor. You should really think about, building your book of business and owning that.
Right.
And then also I do like advisors, many of them are wired this way. They seem to be attracted to working with me. Those who are wanting to have their own brand. So even when you plug into some of these platforms, you don't have to go under their brand, and you're going to have your own website, your own ethos, your own positioning statement, your naming, your logo. It's got to look and feel like you. And that gets me really excited too, Kristen. I love that, right? Like that full agency of that advisor practice.
Yes, I love that too. And then advisors can be very clear on who they want to serve and who they best serve, and, who are they excited and passionate about serving. And I think especially for advisors who have achieved a certain level of success and they are clear on the types of people they like working with and who serves their needs, who they can best fit with. I think when you can be in a spot where you're able to fully express who your clientele is and who you want to work with, and you have that freedom to do it, that's where I see a lot of excitement come into the business, or I should say even like a reigniting of an excitement if someone's kind of, flattened out, gotten a little jaded, and now they're like, they kind of take ownership and dive in, and they're like, this is where we're headed, this is what we're doing. And that's what I like to look for.
Yeah, we just reignited the fun of the industry for them, right? Like that's
right.
That is fantastic. I'm working with someone, and this person is coming out of a wirehouse, has built a great business, but it is feeling like it's gotten just a little bit stale, and they're ready to make it theirs, put their own unique thumbprint on it, if you will. And that's really exciting. They'd been in the business a long time, 20, 30 years, but ready to take that next step and make it unique for them and for their clients.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. What do you think the warning signs are, or the triggers where someone should potentially take that step back and look, unless, obviously when we have an industry event or, something happens that shakes things up, that's one thing. But what is it that you recommend, like when you start seeing this in a person, you're like, oh yeah, they'll need to, let's take a look at some options for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's so many different factors. I think about people who move firms and kind of shake it up. And I find that they fit into a few different profiles. And
Okay.
there's a profile of like a person who's like just the long, slow disenfranchisement, right? They just slowly are going down, down, down in their happiness with their existing
Oh,
platform or firm.
right.
Those honestly are very hard for me to work with because I'm just like, I see it. I don't understand how you don't see it. Like you need to make a move. You're so unhappy. Like let's
Yeah,
get
and you
you
get
moved.
stuck in the I know what I have here and I know how to handle it. And there's a comfort to that knowledge of I just know how to deal with this. Even though it's
Yeah.
not exciting me, I at
Yes.
least know what to do here.
Yes, yes, there is. There's inertia is a powerful force for all of us as humans. It really
Yes,
is.
100%.
There's another profile of somebody who it's just like, the firm does something, it's irritating, then they get happy again, then they get a little irritated, then they get happy again, then they get irritated a lot, and then they get a little happy, and they never quite come back up to the full happiness. And eventually there's a last straw moment. And then they're
Yeah,
like, okay, now I know I need to go. And
got
then
it.
there's
Okay.
somebody who's really proactive. And these are my favorite advisors to work with, right? And really what I hope people take away from any conversation with us is we are all in charge of our life, and that means we are in charge of our practice too.
Right.
And let's step into that proactive CEO energy. And every few years, even, you should be looking around and making sure that you're not missing something for your clients. Personally, I think that's kind of a fiduciary responsibility. If you're a fiduciary for your clients, you should be looking at the industry options and making sure you've got everything in your toolbox that you want to have in order to serve them properly. And also, of course, you want to be the fiduciary of your own life and
Right.
the team's lives, right? You have a responsibility to your team also.
Right. Oh, I like that perspective too, the fiduciary of your own life, for sure. And to your team. I think that's also very important. And I'm seeing that more and more as I do more coaching for teams within organizations to help them, get on the same page around messaging and business development and efforts there, which brings up a good point to me. When you think about the RA owners or leaders of a firm, what advice would you give them to make sure that they're able to keep advisors and when they have these people, like, these are the things you need to be looking out for because otherwise they're going to end up calling me and saying, I need to move.
Yeah, one of the things I would definitely say is pay attention to your comp. On one hand, you are probably perhaps the rainmaker and you've brought in so much of that business. But if you're also asking them at the same time to manage that business, to grow it organically, to be doing things like asking for referrals or hosting client events and having friends and family come in, you've put that person into a business development role at that point.
Right.
So the compensation, if they're in a business development capacity and not just a true servicing advisor, the compensation needs to stay upwards so that if they were looking at other industry options, that they're not too disappointed. I have found too many advisors, particularly some of these what I call RIA breakaways, where their
Mm-hmm.
comp is somewhere between 12 and 20% of the revenue that they are driving. And that's lower than what they could get if they were at a wirehouse.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it's way lower than what they would get if they were independent and owned that practice. Now, some of
Sure.
these folks don't want to own, and that's why they're with you, but you just don't want to create that opportunity and that question. You want them really aligned on your team. So make sure your comp is staying reasonable. And then you want to look at how do you keep them happy? And are we sending them to industry conferences, things like that are going to enable them to grow? And then how are you thinking about succession and equity inside of the firm also? And is
Mm.
there a way to put a really long time frame on that so that they maintain an ownership stake or are able to buy in an ownership stake over time so that they feel like they have a long-term career path inside of your firm?
Oh, I love that because I'm actually hearing more and more about firms looking to add the equity element in because advisors are looking for that. And I do think there's sort of a new generation of advisors who maybe don't necessarily want to start a firm, but they do want to grow into that ownership place through, work and contribution and growth and having that career track. So that is something I'm seeing more and more often, advisors just mentioning it to me. It's not my area of expertise, but I can absolutely see how that trend, just looking at the advisors, why people may, want to go that route.
Yeah, and you think about any person's career path, right? We all start out of college. We don't know much. We know we need to go get trained up somewhere, right? And so you have advisors that are joining RIAs in all kinds of practices as servicing advisors, but then they hit their 30s and they hit their 40s and they want growth. They want to own too, and they know what the revenue picture is. I remember when I was in corporate and I was in my early 20s, I don't know, maybe I was 25 or 27 or something, but I was working for a small PR firm and I knew my billable rate. And then I knew what my hourly essentially was that I was getting paid. I was on salary, but I could do the math, right? We all can do the math. And when you do that as an employee, you're like, wait a minute here. They're making this much on me and I'm only getting this much, right? You want to make sure that people are, when they're doing their math, that they're feeling fulfilled and that all of the non-monetary benefits are there too, and that they're getting the development and they're getting the family feeling and the things that create really great loyalty with your team because you want them to stay.
Right. It's very difficult to find good talent in our industry. And I know that I see a lot of that side of things too from, firm owners who are, working very long hours, working harder than they want to because they're having trouble, finding those good, solid people. And when they have the good team members, and I see teams like that really gel and that they're really proactive, with making sure that their team has what they need to, stay and grow and contribute, it makes a world of difference. So
yeah, it does.
I realize that doesn't help your business quite as much, but it's a good sort of warning to heed, or advice for RIA owners who are really looking to build something that has staying power, that has sustainability over time, and showing advisors who do want to step into that ownership role or leadership role and see the payoff of their contributions.
Yes.
It's good to have that in line. So I'll be curious to see how that develops over, the next decade in this industry, because I do think that'll be a big trend.
It's going to have to be, right? We don't have enough young people coming into the industry to make up for some of the succession, and the elder advisors that are going to be retiring at some point. And, I would say too, Kristen, my personal purpose is really around getting people to a place of flourishing.
Yes.
And so, I often will tell people, I don't recruit unhappy people, right? Happy people do not come to me. Right. It is the folks who are wanting something different, something more, that are looking for making a change. And it's not all about breaking away and starting your own. Sometimes also I'm working with firms who have, decided that they want to make a change for some reason. Maybe it's also even to their custodian relationship. It could be, they need to make some other structural change. They may want to take on a minority partner, and we want to talk about, how does that work, et cetera. Oftentimes I'll bring in partners to help me with something like that. But those kind of structural issues underlying the practice is really where I get involved.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm just still hung up on this 240 line spreadsheet or however long it was, where I'm like, wow, okay. Then I feel like that makes, that puts me at ease knowing that someone has that handled and they're not just going to match make and be like, okay, on your way.
Yeah, I like to say that I don't just walk you to the door. I'm going to walk you all the way through it. And
Ooh,
I'll
nice.
tell you, I'm in constant, maybe not quite constant, but very frequent conversations with my past clients as well. One of my past clients, they moved from a captive broker dealer to independent broker dealer last year. Well, right now we're adding a servicing advisor who has a small book of business also to transfer in. And so, I did the recruiting for that to find that individual, kind of do that matchmaking and say, hey, we have this great practice. Like, let's see if this could be a fit.
Oh, that's a really interesting story. So then you help get the advisor integrated into the new firm with the former client and now new client. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, exactly. I kind of have a new client and an old client.
Yeah, new client and an old. Yeah, so you're bringing someone in, and then that new person, you're helping them integrate into the firm. That's very helpful.
And I love staying involved with the clients and tracking their experience with the firm that they land at, if they're going to a firm, or maybe it would be with the custodians or the various partners. Which tech are they using? What are they loving about it? What are they still having challenges with? And saying, oh, you know what? I have somebody in my network who could do this. Paraplanning resources, et cetera. So I love staying involved and continuing to help wherever I can.
Oh, that's great. I know that you have an approach you call the fit test that helps people kind of look at their situation and say, is this right for me or not? Which I think for people who are starting, it sounds to me like that's good for someone who's starting to have those questions of doubt and or desire for something more. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it works?
Yeah, for sure. It really is a self-assessment tool, and what I see in the industry is, we know about 9,600 or so advisors every year are going to make some type of a switch. And while that's a decent percentage of the industry, it's probably a lot less than the people who want to wonder if they should. And so we created this fit test to say, how can I think through this on my own to know if I should make a move, if I should consider it, if they're on the fence and they're wondering if they're at the right firm. And so it's a guided questionnaire. It's 10 questions, everything from, let's talk about your affiliation fees. Like, what are the numbers that you're paying to be at the firm that you're at today? But also, what is your vision? How is the firm you're at doing with tech? What does your team think about the firm that you're at? Are they starting to say, gosh, I just hate when I have to call into the service lines, or gosh, I wish I could get a decently right answer when I do XYZ, or I wish account opening didn't take me 45 clicks, or, why is this so hard? Right. So we start to really unpack some of those things, and that's going to enable you to self-assess and saying, okay, am I at a good enough place? Am I okay here? Or, gosh, 5 of these questions I hate the answer to.
Right.
That is an indicator we got to have a conversation. We should at least consider a conversation.
Right. And that's a conversation I know you have with advisors and people to say, hey, let's take a look at these types of things and look at the options and see what's possible. And I think what's interesting about your perspective is you may bring up something that they had not even considered.
Yes.
Right. Because there's so many changes and things happening in the market these days.
Yeah, that's right. And there's so many tech changes that are out there and things that you can do, and you can really set a different vision. You can engage your team in a different way also, depending on where you're at. So it's really, really important to just every now and again, do a self-reflection, do a self-assessment, make sure you're being that fiduciary of yourself and of your practice, and having the conversation. It's kind of like the mattress. You know how they now tell you should replace your mattress every 8 years or something. Yeah. It's not to say you necessarily should, but it does make me think every few years. Wonder how long it's been. Maybe I should think about that.
We always have that. Husband and I always have that conversation of like, do you remember when did we buy this one? I feel like we just got it, and then he'll be like, no, I think it's like 10 years old. I'm like, I hope it's not 10. It's kind of like back and forth. You're like, I don't know.
Right. Because inertia is powerful and we get stuck where we are, right? When was the last time you painted your walls or whatever it is, right? We all have to.
Clearly, I need to. Gosh. Yes. No. Not in this room. Yes. There's not a lot of color, but that's kind of, I agree. But you're like, okay, this is a new place, so I can't. But, yeah, no, I understand. And I just want everyone to know we will have a link to the fit test in the show notes so everyone can go in and download that and take the test and get a look at that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
I'm excited for them to have that. I think it's just a nice self-reflection tool, and hopefully people will find value in it.
Yes, I'm sure they will. And before we get into how one can reach you, let's just touch back on the what fulfills you question. Now, I know we talked about travel and I heard a little bit about your family, but give us a little more on, what fulfills you outside of work.
Yeah. So what fulfills me outside of work? Definitely the travel. My family, my husband and I are a blended family. We have 3 total kids,
Wow.
24, 12, and 6. So when we travel, it's with the 12 and the 6-year-old.
Right.
The 24-year-old is actually married and doing amazing and has a baby. So technically,
Ooh.
I'm even a grandma. I keep saying
Wow.
technically I'm a grandma. I'm a grandma. I'm still getting used to that. We spend our summers lakeside. We live in Missouri, so
okay.
in the St. Louis area. So we are at the lake at Innsbruck, is a little lake community outside of St. Louis, and we have a little summer place there.
Oh, that sounds
and
great.
we'll be going there this weekend. So I'm excited.
Oh, good.
It's open for the season now, so we love that, and just, spending time together, being able to get away with a book and a little bit of quiet time is good. That's what I love.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. That's I'm already picturing sort of a peaceful a chair by the lake with a book and just kicking back and enjoying the afternoon. That sounds pretty good.
Yes, and every year there's a swim dock in all of the lakes. There's a swim dock, and so you have to swim out and then you can jump in, right? It's really deep off of the swim dock.
Oh, right.
So I'll be doing that several times with the 6-year-old because that is what he wants. And so,
that I would absolutely love doing that.
Yeah.
That is right up my alley.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
I love swimming, and I was like, I can picture that. You swim out there, climb up, jump in.
Yes.
Yes, that'll be fun. Well, it sounds like it keeps you in good shape and keeps you excited. So that's super fun. All right. So advisors who want to reach you, where can they find you?
Sure. They can find me at Muriel Consulting, Muriel consulting.com. And by the way, Muriel is named after the first woman member of the New York Stock Exchange. She was a breakaway herself. She was a trailblazer, right? It was her and 1,800 men on the New York Stock Exchange originally. And so she broke away, started her own firm because she wasn't getting paid what she wanted to get paid, really.
I love it. I love that. I love when a name has meaning, and especially, she's leading the charge for all the women in the industry. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I love that history of it, right? I definitely, I work with a lot of family practices too, and I love history. I love knowing the roots of this industry. I love honoring, what advisors have done in the past and then continuing to expand on that in the future.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you can go to murielconsulting.com. We can find you on LinkedIn. We'll have all of these links in the show notes so everyone can reach out to Shelby. You can reach out and check out what she has on her site if you want. And if you're listening to this podcast, we invite you to subscribe, hit the button, follow along so the next episode drops. When it drops, it ends up downloaded on your device. We love reviews. We, as we all know, podcasts do better as they get more reviews. So we do have to ask for that, and we do appreciate your feedback very much. And as always, you can find me at fulladvisorcoaching.com or out on LinkedIn. And Shelby, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your contributions. Thanks for coming. Thank you. To everyone listening, go out and make it a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Full Advisor Coaching, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the follow button so you'll never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can become a part of the Full Advisor community, visit fulladvisorcoaching.com. Remember, stay connected and get notified as soon as brand new episodes release. Click the follow button now. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kristen Herod or Full Advisor Coaching.